Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're back out the range, do some more Gauntlet testing. This time our victim shall be the Canik imported by Century Arms. It's a Turkish-made handgun that's gained a lot of popularity. The TP9's been around in a number of different forms over the years. This is the SA model, which has the deleted kill switch on it. They've since come out with an Elite series. I don't own an Elite series, but I have the SA. I also had the previous one that had the kill switch on it, that had the decocker on it that basically disabled the gun. I don't have one of the very first generation guns, which I would like to get my hands on. Those are cool guns too, where you have a decocker and then double action. Basically, it's a striker fired gun, but the equivalent of double action for the first shot, then a lighter follow-up shot, much like the Walther P99, which it copies. So anyway, this is the SA version. This handgun you've seen tested before. We've stomped it in mud holes and done other things with it. We have cleaned the gun up just like we have every other gun before we started our testing. So this gun is broken in. This gun has been cleaned already. We cleaned it again this afternoon, put CLP on it, made sure that it's all ready to go. We are going to use the same Fiocchi 124 grain ball ammunition that we've done all of our testing with in the past. And this stuff has an advertised velocity with its 124 grain bullet of about 1150 feet per second, so it's nice warm stuff. We load 10 rounds into each magazine, and we do our what we call our elements test. And that's where we dunk it in water, fire 10 rounds, lay it in the sand on both sides, fire 10 rounds, clean it, go to dirt, clean it, go to mud. And if the gun passes that without any major concerns, we then go into the Gauntlet, which means we just dunk it in water, sand, dirt, and mud with no rinsing or cleaning cycle in between. We do not clean or lubricate the gun before we go into the Gauntlet. We just clean it off by dunking it in its own dirty water before we start that battery of tests. Basically, the only time in between is how long it takes us to load up the magazines to resume the testing. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and do our customary 10 rounds of function checking to make sure that the gun's working okay with the Fiocchi ammunition. So I'm going to go ahead and load 10 rounds, make the Canik ready. Did not lock open on the last round fired. It could have been me riding the lever. I have that problem with some guns, but we'll go ahead and start the tests anyway. It's just kind of in a bad location. I ride my thumbs like this when I fire. This just happens to be in a bad location. A lot of automatic pistols have that problem for me. My thumb actually rides that slide stop and keeps it from engaging, so I don't think that was a problem with the gun. I'm going to go ahead and load up 10 more rounds since I fired 10 rounds, and then we will start our tests. I will say that I like the Canik pistols, and yes, it's pronounced with a J. I've been to Turkey twice, and they don't call it a Canik, they call it a Canik. So that is the proper pronunciation based upon the Turks who corrected me. All right, we got 10 rounds loaded, and now we will begin our elements test. Going to load the weapon as though we're going to carry it, and it's ready to go. Magazine inserted, round chambered. Now we're just going to lay it in the water and wait for those bubbles to stop. Okay, here we go, 10 rounds. I'm trying to keep my thumb away from that slide stop. Seemed to work. Just making a conscious effort not to do that. Now we're going to go straight to the sand. Going to make the weapon ready. You'll notice that just by inserting the magazine, the slide closed. I'll lay it into the sand and just push it down on one side. Of course, the moisture helps hold the sand against the gun. Do the same thing on the other side, push it down. Now we're going to fire 10 rounds. All right, the rinse cycle. Going to try to get some of the contaminants off the gun really quick. All right, and now we're going to go over to the dirt, make the weapon ready. Just going to lay it in the dirt on both sides. Again, the moisture kind of holds the dirt against the gun. And here we go. No problems so far. Again, we do expect all guns to pass this battery of tests. Let me go ahead and rinse it off. We don't feel that this is unreasonable for any standard defensive arm to pass this series of tests. But some do stumble. So far, the Canik is doing very good. We got her cleaned off. 10 rounds. We're going to go ahead and put her in the mud. Push it down a little bit. Other side. Push her down. And here we go. All right, failure to go into battery. You can see the slide is slightly out of battery. I don't know if it has a fresh round or not, but I did pull the trigger. It probably won't fire. Nope. Dead trigger. Malfunction. Failure to go into chamber. Just going to go ahead and pull that slide slightly to the rear. And it locked open. So we had a couple of stumbles there in the mud. I will say the mud is probably the most rigorous test that we put the guns through. The gun stumbled a couple of times. So it did pretty good all the way up until we hit that mud, which is not uncommon. Well, we have found some guns that absolutely love the mud. The Smith & Wesson happens to be one of them, the MMP 2.0. All right, guys, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go on to the Gauntlet, which means we're just going to go straight from water, sand, dirt to mud. We're not going to rinse the gun in between. I am going to clean the gun off real quickly in its own dirty water, myself included. This is designed to be as hard as we possibly can be on the gun without actually opening the gun and stuffing stuff inside of it. I don't feel that's a fair test. You see people doing that on YouTube. That's just a good way to destroy your gun. All right, so the gun's reset. We're not going to clean it any more than that. We're going to go ahead and load these magazines up, and the test is reset. We're just going to run straight through after I get rid of the spent cases here. We got to reset the test medium too. And then we'll get into the Gauntlet. All right, guys, we've reset the test. We got the magazines loaded with the 124 grain Fiocchi ammunition. Again, I would like to thank the guys over at Fiocchi for supplying the ammunition for these tests. They've been doing that since our test started for the most part. All right, go ahead and get the Janik ready. It's a little bit gritty, guys. Start off by loading 10 rounds of the Fiocchi ammunition, and right there, it did not go into battery. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and tap it into battery. That doesn't seem to bode too well for our Janik here. See what happens. It's hard to predict these things, guys. 10 rounds. All right. I could have been wrong. Come on, little Janik. These little Turkish-made pistols represent a pretty darn good value in the market. They're not very expensive, and they've been pretty darn popular. Push it down. We do kick a little bit of stuff up over the gun. And the Gauntlet, we're trying to make it as hard as we possibly can on the gun. All right, get some sand all over it. There we go. All right, nothing, so I don't know if we got a bad round. All right, got nothing. We'll try it one more time. The striker's back. I can see the striker's back. I've had some of the guns do this before. They eventually fire, and that trigger bar just isn't going to go. All right, so we're going to go ahead, run it again. The gun's dead, guys. Something is preventing that trigger. This is a very unsafe condition. So you can see that striker's back. Very unsafe. We can see our round's chambered. It has a loaded chamber indicator. So there is a round in the chamber. Slides fully home. It's just that that trigger is not working. So we've seen this before. I'm not going to continue the tests because the gun is unsafe at this point. It could go off at any time. I'm going to go ahead and clear the weapon. Live round, just fine. And still, that trigger is non-functional. The weapon is safe. You can see trigger's making full motion, but the striker is not firing. Out of curiosity, I want to see what's gone wrong, so I'm going to go ahead and strip the gun down. Since I can't release the striker, I may not be able to actually field strip it to see what's hot. There we go. All right. Now, if you take a look inside these guns, this is what's always amazing. Really, it's just mostly moisture. There's not a whole lot of contaminant in there. There's the trigger bar right there. And for whatever reason, that is not engaging the striker and releasing it. Saw this with the VP9. So that's a pretty nasty failure, guys. And you can see there's not that much stuff inside the gun. There just isn't. And it's completely stopped working. So what I'm going to do here really quick, just leave the camera rolling. I'm just going to dunk the gun in here, try to clear the stuff out of it. Not going to be able to resume our testing, but I do want to see if the gun striker will resume working. Alright, locked open. All we needed to do was clean it, but since we've cleaned it, it wouldn't be fair to continue the gauntlet because we've rinsed it off. So the gun failed, guys. It simply would not work. The striker was no longer functioning. We're going to go ahead and clean the gun up a little bit here. We're going to hose it off, see if we can get it working again 100%. Kind of digest what we saw this afternoon, give you some final thoughts. All right, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to rinse the Janik off. We've done this to some guns like the RP9, the Smith & Wesson, and others that even after being flushed, they did not resume function. The Beretta M9A1, we did not do this to. We just dunked it in its own dirty water and let it set for a little bit while we reloaded magazines, and it resumed 100% function. So we completely cleared all the contaminants out of this gun. There's nothing left inside of it. No sand, dirt, or mud. It's just basically now void of any type of lubrication other than the water itself, which isn't much of a lubricant. And we're just going to see if this little gun will return to function. Now, we did this with the M&P 2.0, and we still had some problems, man, with slide velocity being really, really low. The gun wasn't cycling 100%. Let's see what happens to this little Janik. So we just finished rinsing the gun off, stripping it down, rinsing it off basically under a garden hose. We're going to see if the gun resumes function. Some guns do, other guns do not. Let's go ahead and see what happens with this little Janik. Got a couple magazines left over because the gun failed the Gauntlet test. And she's 100% function after rinsing it off in the water, which is something I would expect to see. Some guns didn't. Smith & Wesson 2.0 did not. The Remington RP9 did not. This gun did. And yeah, so what do we think about this little guy? Well, I will say this much. It represents a pretty darn good value, I think, in the handgun market. A lot of handguns are in the $500–600 range, and that really is out of reach of many working Americans. This handgun comes to market in the $350 range. Haven't priced them recently, but sub 400, which makes it a very attractively priced. The quality on the guns, in my opinion, is actually pretty darn good. Now, we did have some problems with the gun in the first battery of tests. It made through the water, sand, dirt. We got to the mud, and I think we had 2 malfunctions in the mud. And the mud's kind of hard, right? So that's pretty nasty, sticky mud. The fact that it made it through the other elements, I think, is pretty good. Now, guys, keep in mind, these tests are mostly for entertainment value. Yes, I place certain value on them, but really, this isn't scientific. Even though we've tried to make it as scientific as we possibly can, it's simply not a scientific test. Again, it's purely for entertainment value. We could run this gun through the test a second time, and the striker may start working again. It's not necessarily repeatable or scientific. Just keep that in mind. With that being said, I do expect a carry gun to make it through the elemental test, the first test that we conduct, with no issues or very minimal issues. My own carry gun, I would expect it to make it through with very few malfunctions. In the mud, I could accept. In water, I can't accept. The world's 2/3 water. There's a good chance your gun's going to get wet. Sand and dirt, you know, basically what these tests simulate, guys, is basically dropping the gun on the ground, maybe rolling around on the ground with your gun in a scuffle. It's not a really, really hard test. We have the magazine out, the slide lock to the rear, we're cramming stuff into the gun. I don't believe that that's a realistic test. If you pull your weapon in a defensive situation, there is a possibility it'll get knocked out of your hand. You may drop it, have to retrieve it from the ground, something like that. And again, that's what these tests are kind of designed to simulate. When we set these tests up, we expected every single gun to pass. I thought it was too easy on the guns. After all, we're just laying the guns on both sides in the contaminants. Anyway, so the little Janik didn't do too bad. It wasn't the worst, it wasn't the best. It was right in the middle of the road. It had a couple of hiccups there during the first elemental tests. It failed pretty miserably in the Gauntlet tests. So anyway, would I buy the gun? Absolutely. I still think it represents a very good value in handguns. If you're looking for a defensive arm that you don't want to spend an arm and a leg for, you certainly can't go wrong with these little Janiks. A very decent little pistol. Yeah, so that's kind of my opinion. I think that they're well-made guns. I don't carry one, but if it's all I could get, I would take it over a High Point. We ran the High Point through this test. I have to go back and watch that video and see how this gun compared to the High Point. Guys, if you want to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that with all the craziness going on with YouTube right now is to swing by our Patreon page. Become a subscriber to the Military Arms Channel. It allows me to have a direct relationship with you guys. You guys can fund the channel. We don't have to rely on YouTube for revenue, and that keeps us being able to produce videos for you guys on a regular basis. We also do some really cool stuff. We have some really, I mean, right now, the gun market's really in a bad shape, and distributors are just blowing stuff out at dirt cheap prices. And when we find that stuff at Copper Custom, we're posting it up to our patron subscribers and only our patron subscribers and giving you that stuff at cost. We're not even marking this stuff up. We're just giving it away at dirt cheap prices just as a thank you to our patron subscribers that help us out here at the Military Arms Channel. But another way that you can support us, of course, is to swing by and check out our online store, which is Copper Custom. It's coppercustom.com. It's a great way to support not only the Military Arms Channel, but the great guys, the good old Americans, except for Connor, who has a Rock River Arms rifle. It's a great way. He's running the camera right now. He's laughing. But it's a great way to support us there as well. So please swing by and check out Copper Custom. Also, full30.com's out there, guys. If you're looking for GunTube, that's as close as it's going to get. We've taken all the top gun channels on YouTube, brought them over to a gun-friendly platform where YouTube cannot screw with us. And it's a great place where you won't see Tampex or Lysol commercials. You actually see a cool commercial of, Daniel's Defense and Henry rifles and all sorts of cool stuff. And you won't have to put up with, soccer mom stuff. Anyway, not that soccer moms are bad. I'm married to one. Sorry, honey. Guys, thanks for watching all those years. Thanks for all the years of support. And we will talk to you guys soon. Oh!
There we go. Nope. Barely.
Oh!
Ooh. Another double feed.
Yeah.
I would say barely.
Time for some CLP.
Yep. I'm determined to get through this magazine though. Great manual of arms right here. She's just not gonna do it.
Oh!
Oh. Yep, real double feed now. Sorry guys.
Well, we tried to fire the gun while it was bone dry after sitting after we hosed it off basically on a garden hose, and it's just not going to work, guys. Just a little bit sluggish. The gun apparently needs some lubrication. Again, we're going to try to do just a quick squirt of CLP into the gun. Let it run down inside the action. Just kind of a real quick field expedient way to kind of get her back up and running here if we can. Wipe off the excess so I don't destroy my sunglasses. And see if we can get this bad boy to work. Now that should be enough to get the gun to work. Okay, let's go ahead. I got 2 magazines. Let's walk over here. Kind of interesting that just basically drying the guns off with water causes them to stop working. But a little bit of CLP works wonders. So yeah, man, that's kind of weird how just basically rinsing the gun off with water and putting it back together and letting it dry, it had dried off, causes enough friction to keep the gun from working. Keep in mind, we did this to the Beretta, but we just dunked it in its own dirty water and let it dry out that afternoon, and we took it and it ran just fine. So that's pretty much kudos to the Beretta for being able to do that, because we didn't even hose it off in clean tap water. But a little bit of lubrication got the Janik back up and running. So the moral of that story is, always have some oil somewhere.